Well, hey there guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Snoo, and at long last I have it here for you, the build showcase for one evolved elemental hit of the spectrum, Warden. What do I mean by evolved? Well, it's progressed way beyond the initial league starter status of the build guide. Yes, it's still my league starter technically, still playing bow, still playing Warden, absolutely loving it. I have so many kind words to say about it, especially as like kind of macro level, looking at the meta of bow gameplay, comparing it to Deadeye. I made a video early on in the league how I thought things might turn out, and wow, it was as good if not better than expected, especially on the whole freeze thing. I mean, absolutely blows my mind. This has been a highly requested video. The moment I stepped beyond the crit headhunter variant of the build, a lot of you who are following have been asking me my opinion about certain things I'm doing, maybe different suggestions, ideas. For that note, I do have a final section down below, which I'll give you a little bonus teaser on something I might do beyond what I show you here today. But essentially, this build is finished. As far as the tech and toys and all that is concerned, I will, right off the top, let you know what the big items were and how they changed the build. That's the first section. Then we'll get into a map showcase for you. And after that, it'll be the gear, the gems, the jewels. Spend a little extra time there with a Forbidden Flame Flesh combo. Got to talk about that. Most of the questions, I think, are about that. And then we'll do the passives, the path of building calculation, then I'll get through the final thoughts. So it's a long video. Please do follow along in the timestamps. You can fast forward if you want. And if you want to know what I might be doing way beyond this, well, take a look at the timestamps toward the end, the little teaser down there for you. Okay, so here she is with the fledgling helmet, a new helmet I've never worn before until this league. Kind of had to because we got far shot, baby. The Deadeye gets far shot, double far shot too, but now the Warden gets the big component of far shot through the helmet, and don't really need the helmet for anything else too much if I don't need the reservation efficiency. And we're not using the same helmet as last time because the whole berserk thing was nerfed. But anyway, this is not necessarily a big deal beyond that component, but I definitely think this helmet is absolutely boosting a lot of the numbers and the damage for the build. Honestly, guys, I'm doing roughly 3 to 4 times as much damage as I normally would be on a comparable Deadeye of similar gear before with roughly the same amount of EHP. But then I also get freeze, which is infinitely more EHP effective in a practical sense. So that is just absolutely, this build just blowing every build I've ever played out the water as far as, you know, this kind of investment. And this is especially true when I don't wear Magic Find gear for the most part, because we're not doing Magic Find this time. Anyway, new items beyond the crit headhunter variant. I believe in order that I purchased them would be Progenesis, which, guys, I've dropped Grace, I've dropped a Jade Flask. I'm about to drop Progenesis, except that it does give me Chaos Res, which is kind of a big deal. If it wasn't for the fact that this automatically gave Chaos Res, I'm not sure I'd run it. It's just almost seems redundant at this point. It is good for spells, though, and chaos damage, so probably should leave it in there, but my god, I just rarely ever get hit by anything anymore. Okay, after that was Nimbus. This is a huge one. It does actually have some major ramifications on how the build plays. Suddenly you're going to be standing inside the hitbox of enemies, dramatically increase the damage of any sort of single target, pilfered bosses. This is how I'm able to, I mean, oh, well, actually before I got the Nimbus, I was still able to handle 1,000 or 2,000 divination card pilfered T16 bosses, but this makes it really easy, and even without headhunters I can handle a boss like that, thanks to freeze anyway. But if you stand on the hitbox of the enemy, the fledgling may result in the outbound projectiles not hitting anything. Only one is eligible to hit, but all of the returning projectiles can hit if you position yourself nicely. So when you're firing, you know, 5, 6, 7 projectiles, or in the case of Headhunter, like 25, 26 projectiles, the damage goes absolutely bonkers in the end. And the Nimbus ring, anyone who's ever played it knows that, especially with good positioning, this dramatically increases the damage. Path of building cannot really even properly represent how much of a damage increase. Of course, this allows you to drop the return projectiles support gem and get a real support gem in there, in which case if I was going for, I believe, crit damage support, which is a big one. Still got the other taming on, though. Okay. And after that, I believe I got these boots. So these are Elevated Tailwind, Elevated Onslaught, Elusive Boots, a classic choice from a bygone era. A lot of people typically go for Eldritch Influence boots, or I was always just wearing Gold Worms before, as you know. But yeah, these boots are incredibly strong and really helped solve some of the movement speed issues, which I think was probably the biggest complaint about the build that I ever got, was that it felt a little slow. This was to be expected. Tattoos helped a lot with this, but definitely when dropping Lionized Paws, which, you know, hurt the damage a bit because I had a really powerful pseudo 6-link in there. It was still really good idea to do this, and I mean, it's just so much quality of life coming from this. It also allowed me to drop the elusive enchant on the bow to get a better enchant in that sense. After that, I believe next major upgrade was a Forbidden Flame Flesh combo, Fury of Nature, which proliferates all elemental ailments and duplicates the effectiveness or thresholds of those elemental ailments as well, except for freeze. Doesn't actually work that way for freeze. And I'll have some words to say about that and kind of work around on that, but definitely proves to be incredibly good. It's the greatest degree of proliferation that you can get on elemental ailments, and this is a highly focused build on elemental ailments. I think it even has probably taken over the category as far as, you know, the elementalist needs some rework, shall we say, to have a chance to beat what the Warden has to offer now. Alright guys, so that's it for kind of the TLDR of where the build's at. Next, let me give you a build showcase. And in here, I've been working on a Wisp. I do believe Wisps are coming back into play. I got the Atlas here for you. It will be linked down in the description below. This is not a strategy build guide showcase or anything like that on a farm or whatever, so I'm not going to spend time talking about this, but as you can see, I'm kind of target farming scarabs here, sort of, and it's just focused on shrines and boxes. I'm rolling the boxes. I got the materials here for you. Look at this map, very spicy map, with the 100% more scarab quality. This is already 271% more scarabs, and this map, I bought it for 3 divines. Okay, this map is basically worth at least 3 divines. A lot of people don't want to run it though because it's volatile cores, and I think my build is very well suited for volatile cores because it's quick on its feet and it's not feeding into that meta gameplay where you just sort of build a tanky character, can tank everything. Volatile cores actually, in a weird sense, indirectly elevates quick on its feet, evasive characters that would just naturally avoid damage or be used to it anyway, because we kind of have to avoid a lot of damage instead of just tanking things. Players who rather play a more lazy type gameplay are not going to like volatile cores because it absolutely smashes everyone. It doesn't matter how you build the character, unless you have like 80 headhunter buffs. But anyway, I have less accuracy rating too, which means I'm going to have to change something in the build. Going to need to get that accuracy rating. In the event that I do that, I'm going to drop perhaps the least important 4 passive points I have and just do that, and voila, I'm way over accuracy cap. Got the level 30 precision as well. Alright, so I'm going to start this map, and I'm going to fast forward through a lot of this. I'm not going to show you the whole map because it's a very long time consuming map, but the currency gain per map is crazy. So it does actually seem to be worth it, even in terms of time is concerned. You can see 603% more scarabs. So yeah, just stay tuned. I'm going to show you some of the footage on here. I'll show the opening part, at least to the point where I rushed the boss. I'm really disappointed that the bubbles are in play. I actually despise the bubbles more than volatile cores. They seem to be more deadly for me. Shrines will help me take care of the boss. Getting a couple of headhunter buffs will as well. Although I forgot this is a buffs expires faster map, so it may not work out so well with the whole shrine thing. This is a little bit... I mean, look how fast that guy died there. I only had 11 headhunter buffs. I mean, you can see there's a major difference than before. Now, the problem is I don't actually have enough... Because of the shrine effects disappearing, I don't really have enough to kill the boss, probably. I don't know, though. We'll try. Let's try it out. Now, in previous iterations of builds, I would not do this boss with only 14 headhunter buffs. I would actually have, like, no chance of killing it. It just wouldn't do anywhere near enough damage. But you could see there, I had plenty of damage. I mean, look at that. That's alright. Still got to kind of avoid the damage there. A little bit of a close call, but, yeah, I mean... I'm not relying on I mean, I'm not even a Fizz variant, so no Fizz is extra going on here. I don't think there was very much in the way of headhunter help. I mean, that's just pure damage from the build. This build doing like 3 or 4 times more damage than a similar Deadeye would be in previous iterations, even on like multi-mirror tier gear. So really, I can't even rely on freeze because the tier 17 boss can't actually be stopped. It's 50% less action speed. But anyway, I'm now going to roll the boxes. I'm going to roll all these boxes with 3 additional rares, guarded by 3 rare monsters, or guarded by a stream of monsters, which is actually even better, but harder to hit. So every single box can be rolled. How many boxes am I rolling? 31 by the looks of it, okay? And you can see a lot of scarabs coming out of this map, but that's not really the important part. I'm going to skip this part for you because it's a little mundane, definitely not very exciting to watch, and I want to respect your time, so we're going to focus on the actual build showcase. Alright, here we go. I have now rolled every single box with guarded by 3 rares or a stream of additional monsters, and this is what happens. You actually roll the boxes. This is kind of loot that you get. I don't even have a currency roll on the map. Again, the bubbles are actually a lot more dangerous than the volatile cores. The moment I get Shroud Walker, it's going to be very contentious, but reopens on the boxes, all of them having premium drops, this many more scarabs, again 600% more scarabs, with at least 3 rares coming out of every box, a third of them being reopened, with 31 boxes on the map. That's crazy. I mean, there's nothing else in the game I'm aware of that can produce more loot than this, as far as I know. Per time, maybe another question, but per map, definitely not. I think there are probably a lot of you who are running a strat similar to this, but you're not rolling the boxes. I mean, you tell me. Does my loot look a little different than yours? I'd be willing to bet it does. The reason is because I've tried both. Really just can't justify not rolling the boxes unless you do a much lower investment strat. Which is fine. But, you know, kind of hunting for the best, highest investment strat. So, I am getting hit by volatile cores occasionally, but, you know, in most cases, it's going to either one-shot me or come close. But you can see it can still kind of handle it. I guess I got all the boxes over there. Oh. Already almost halfway done. Stream of monsters means the rares will spawn towards the end. I mean, look at all, look at all those bubbles, cores chasing me. I wouldn't even say this loot is good. I'm actually slightly disappointed with the loot that's coming out of this map. Having ran multiple maps like this. Part of it is, yeah, because I'm not getting very many reopens is a little unlucky, but I've had 3 big scarab drops so far. Another one, too. Okay. Loot's starting to look a little better now. A little bit better. Now, I do believe wisps are playing at least a minor role in this, even for the scarabs. The yellow juice has been known to just automatically increase the quantity of drops. And now that scarabs are acting like maps, this might be even more profound for scarab, because I know that yellow juice definitely improved the drop rate of maps before, but not necessarily like divination cards. So it might be something, you know, the interaction and the weightings of things, how it's impacted by, you know, player quant versus not, all that. I think wisps might actually be a little bit extra good for scarabs. And very few reopens on this map. It's not pretty good results though. So that's it. I'm just kind of killing the final mobs here, but that's basically going to conclude the map showcase. I'm going to pick up all those scarabs and take them home, and then we'll move on with the gear next. Alright, you might have not noticed I actually forgot to put this jewel back into the primary slot before. I was not even immune to corrupted blood in that map, but lucky it didn't matter. I was missing a little bit of stats there, but okay. Worked out okay. I'm going to get to the gear now. We're going to start with the bow. First thing you'll notice is that the enchant gain onslaught after spending a total of 200 mana. Listen, guys, I mean, it's unfortunate. GGG really doesn't want players to play bows this league, I think, even though they're just so much better than everything else. The enchants are garbage compared to what some of the other archetypes get. However, it does look like onslaught is proving to be very strong for damage and movement skill, or what have you. So I have a chance to get onslaught thanks to these boots now. Is the only other source of it. but that's not necessarily going to be up, especially on bosses. So to get it up on bosses is a huge damage increase. So that's why it's here as a backup, even when I'm not doing maps. And I care a lot about boss damage. You know, this league matters quite a bit. The tier 17 bosses, Wisped or Pilfered T16 bosses, it matters quite a bit. So that's why it's there. It does help in maps as well, you know, in the event that I don't proc that on kill, % chance. The bow was crafted. I bought the base for about 30 div. I think it's still around the same price. And, you know, this craft is pretty straightforward. Starts with essences till you hit one of the other high tier damage, flat damage, and then you clean up the prefix slot and then do a reforge. Prefixes cannot be changed. Reforge the element that's missing until you hit another high tier. Usually you have to settle for something worse than tier 2, but I got somewhat lucky and got all tier 2 in this case. Because the fractured mod for bow attacks fire 2 additional arrows is there, it's fairly easy to finish the item with either Veiled Chaos Orb or taking a little bit more risk for the reforged speed. Got lucky here and got the tier 1 attack speed. Didn't expect to necessarily get that, but a very, very strong bow. Certainly worth a lot of currency, probably somewhere in the realm of 50 to 150 div in value. You could get unlucky, spend way more than that. I think I spent in excess of 100 divines on this bow in total. Then we got a quiver over here. This has been a recraft. It occurred to me through path of building my setup that a second flat damage would prove to be as good as % damage with bows. You find this surprising because I already have a lot of sources of flat damage, but I also have a lot of sources of % damage too. So in this case, it's easier to craft because then I only have to exalt annul the life mod at the end. Traditional quiver craft with cannot roll attack modifiers at the end after you get all those attack modifiers in place. This also costs around 50 divines to make, however. Maybe a little less if you get lucky. But if you want all tier 1, it's going to be at least 50 divines, generally. After that, let's go ahead and get the rare crafts out of the way. We got the gloves. Now, I've also recrafted these in the past. I wanted to get the temple mod in here. I got lucky and bought these finished with the suffixes already done. Prefixes, I had to do a lot of Eldritch crafting. If I didn't have the suffixes to start, I would just have to, of course, fracture the temple mod. That would be pretty easy to go from there. The suppress means I don't need to get suppress on the tattoos, which normally would. And my oh my, I had to pay an arm and a leg. I think it took me, I don't know how many Maven Orb, maybe 30 or so to hit the exquisite mod for 2 rage on attack hit. Big deal, you got to hit that though. Got very unlucky with that, and I spent at least 100 divines on the, well, maybe not. Yeah, probably somewhere between 50 and 100 divines on these gloves because I got really unlucky on the implicit. That happens. Now, the boots would be pretty expensive, but there are a lot of them being crafted. It's such a classic craft that a lot of people do all the time. And I was able to buy these straight up finished, not counting divining. Cost me 55 divines, probably spent about 70 or 80 divines. Considering divining it. It's not perfectly divine, but the effective tailwind mod does matter that it's perfectly rolled because that's an extra action speed percentage. So I might finish these up again. I don't know. We'll see. It's satisfactory though, for sure. That would be all of the rare crafts. Still got an OG taming, perfectly rolled taming in here, and then I lost the other taming, which meant bad things for the resistance situation. Still got 36 res back through the Nimbus ring, and then got a whole bunch of resistances on the boots and gloves. Kind of helped make up for the situation. I'm sitting really pretty here. This is an excellent resistant profile, considering I'm running Eldritch Altars, and it sometimes lose 40 to 50 cold and lightning res. Just exactly the kind of resistances you want prior to going into maps. Don't get any res from the flask except a dying sun. Still got Hiri's Truth. This, especially if you can get a crit multi with a additional curse implicit, I really think this elevates this amulet to like really high tier status, and it's not all that expensive, was it? Master Fletcher Anointed might confuse some of you. The passives are very, I mean, that's just a testament to how tight the build is that I went ahead and anointed that, even though I could have taken 4 passive points to get there instead of 3 with some action speed along the way. But I decided that wasn't worth it. And I did have Assassination on here, but I get 0 value out of the crit chance at this point, so I think it was better to actually just get that extra projectile in there that way and save some passive points. +2 socketed Hiri's Ire is really good, still fairly cheap. And I mean, if it's got a very high cold, flat cold roll, that does matter a bit there. Proves to be more damage than % damage, which I was running before. Headhunter is still here. Perfect life roll, no corruptions. I definitely should get corruption, or double corruption on this at some point. The headhunter is low enough in value, you should go for that. But maybe not super high priority at the time. Fledgling's still here. This is my only source of life regen, which is actually kind of a big deal. Cannot be blinded, I don't think matters that much. Of course, I want reservation efficiency. That would, I think, save me maybe 3 passive points. But this is a really nice setup here. And, you know, I have 98 mana, which is a great number to have for this kind of build. All right, I think that's it for the gear. I still got some flasks. So I'm running a rarity flask, a flexible slot here. I'm not really sure how much this matters. I really need to know if this matters at all for blue wisp juice. It used to, I believe, but it's kind of peculiar. It's hard to know. If you have any comments on that, please let me know in the comment section if you think the wisp factors in rarity for the currency rolls on that conversion to the yellow and blue juice wisp stuff in particular. Still got a diamond flask and a quicksilver flask, and then Progenesis and Dying Sun is still in there because, you know, the returning projectiles, all of them can hit, so I do kind of like adding projectiles. Really nice. Increased area of effect is a big deal as well for this build. All right, that's it for the gear completely. Now let's go to the gem links. All right, Elemental Hit of the Spectrum, level 21. Bumped up to 23. It's really nice. Inspiration Support, gotta have it. I mean, look at this. It's 17 mana still. And then Awaken Elemental Damage Attack Support. Cannot run Elemental Reflect, though, automatically anyway, because of still using Storm Rain and Rain of Arrows and Saturation and other links. Mirage Archer, Trinity, and Increased Damage, Crit Damage Support. This was the one that Crit Damage Support was out, and Return Projectiles was in before Nimbus. Mirage Archer, I usually don't actually run this, but I am this league because of Hoarfrost and Shocks being the way they are. I don't need to worry about scorching hard too much harder. I seem to get max scorch anyway, and so this works out really, really nice. Obviously, I'm not running Painseeker anymore. The Rage and all this stuff does prove to be better, but it's, you know, certain items like these boots and these gloves, while they are much better than the League Start variant, the cost-to-benefit ratio is so, like, wide that they should be further back on the priority list of upgrade, and that's why, you know, the earlier versions of the build didn't feature items like this. But make no mistake, you know, some of these rare pieces are better. Just wanted to make sure you knew that. All right, over here we got a 6-link, which is something I've been incorporating in most of my builds. If I'm not running a ballista, focused ballista setup, it is a cast on crit, Mana Forge, life tap 6-link with 2 spells at my disposal. In this case, 2 curses, because we get the additional curse here. Not doing the reversed elemental resistance thing, which Deadeyes would be doing with that mastery, but instead going for gold on reducing elemental resistance from monsters. I got the double scorch plus elemental weakness. This is where a lot of the huge amount of damage is coming from on this build. That's a lot of increased damage take. I mean, that's almost 100% reduced elemental resistances from those 2 sources I just mentioned. Now over here, I did have Lionized Paws. I had to lose things like Bone Chill and, you know, Hydrosphere and stuff, but I got to keep Tornado by just setting up kind of a forcing a 4-link cast on crit Mana Forge 7 is not exactly an efficient thing to do here. But with only level 2 Rain of Arrows of Saturation, the mana cost is set up really nice. Okay, so I got 17 mana and I got 11 mana, which means every 2 casts, Rain of Arrows of Saturation goes off. That works out pretty nicely. You see every cast, Storm Rain goes off cooldown because it's on life tap. Storm Rain is actually super important. I should actually mention that Storm Rain did prove to be incredible. And initial versions of the League Starter featured Rain of Arrows Saturation here, but what I didn't really factor in is a single target, especially on a hitbox that's pretty big, like a boss. The amount of shock stacking and Hoarfrost stacking is absurd with Storm Rain. It's when the boss sits there and doesn't move, which is probably going to if it's frozen, or if it's, you know, 50% slower, right? Really, really, really great. Storm Rain's an absolute MVP of the build that I didn't really see coming as this skill gem of choice in the 6-link Mana Forge setup. All right, a few more links to go through. Let's get the auras out of the way. Level 4 Enlighten, Purity, Haste, and Anger. Okay, I was running Grace here, but guys, I don't need Grace. Okay, another cool thing about the build, I'm able to get more damage and effectively lose almost no defenses. I mean, you saw the map showcase. How often are enemies able to hit me, really? I mean, random rare mob effects like volatile cores and bubbles are way more dangerous than any sort of like melee attack or projectile attack or even direct spell attack for that matter. I'm 100% spell suppress anyway. And I just figured why not go anger? And we got a Watcher's Eye. It's going to match up really nicely with this. So going anger, just all in on the flat damage. I mean, this is a crazy amount of flat damage here. We got anger. All right, we got a whole bunch from the quiver. We got a whole bunch from the bow. We got a whole bunch from, I mean, look at the number on the elemental hit of the spectrum, guys. I probably got a few other sources elsewhere. I mean, I got a little bit on the gloves even. Don't just, I mean, you'll see in the calculations. The damage is wild. All right, so yeah, this link, this is 350% ores plus precision from Here's Truth. Does fit in to the build pretty nicely. I do have a 2% reservation corruption on a jewel, which would, if anything, be the only build enabling corruption in the entire build. You could say life regen is somewhat build enabling, being the only source here, but really no. I mean, it still works. I would still have like 70 mana. Anyway, any other links to do? Yes. Okay. Now this was the sort of cutesy 4-link that, or 3-link of bombarding clones, getting ignite into the build. Combustion is still working. I think they finally fixed the PoE on this. It's registering the damage from that. And then it's a 3-link, so now flame dash here. I don't need frenzy anymore. It is a benchcraft here. All right, so that's it for the gem links, right? Got them all? Yep, I think so. What are we doing next? We're doing jewels. All right, well, let's get the big one out of the way, okay? Forbidden Flame Flesh combo, Fury of Nature. A lot of people don't really understand what this does or how strong it is. Look it up on the wiki if you want to. Basically, this proliferates all of your elemental ailments. You don't need it on a support, all of them from all sources, and does it at a wider range than any other source, further increased by increased AoE from things like Dying Sun and what have you. This build is entirely centered around elemental ailments. It's proliferating the entire 50 shock stacks. It's proliferating the freeze. It's proliferating the max scorch, double scorch that's going on. It also grants double thresholds of every single elemental ailment except freeze. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually make you freeze harder, but it does proliferate the freezes, which proves to be really, really powerful. An excellent Forbidden Flame Flesh jewel for this build, and they were dirt cheap. I mean, I paid like 30 divines for this combo when I bought them. Yes, I did keep that a secret. I didn't want people to know I was buying this because I know that this market is insanely volatile. And honestly, I mean, I wasn't 100% sure I'd like it. I wanted to test it, see if I even liked it. I figured I would, and I did. And so I liked it, I kept them, and then the market went crazy. And look, I got no part in that. I don't know why. It happens that way. It's just the supply demand is really, really off kilter. But I got good news for you. A workaround for this, there is a decent one, okay? Blast Freeze is a cluster jewel that allows you to proliferate freeze, just freeze. And it's and that works out really nicely in maps. The range is not as big, but it can be crafted on medium cluster as well as Storm Rider on the medium cluster, which gives you a lot of leeway on this incredibly expensive cluster that, you know, you have to fracture corrosive elements. I spent 100 divines on this cluster, by the way. Got very unlucky with the fractures. So you can basically remove the need for this, or get a lot of the value of this Forbidden Flame Flesh combo, and in substituting some excellent basic jewels. I mean, I had like triple crit multi% life basic jewels in here before, guys. I mean, that's a lot of damage I'm actually losing on the path of building anyway by not using those basic jewels. I mean, we get so much crit. You can have a quadruple crit multi-basic jewel for this build because it's all 3 different elements. Anyway, this is a superior setup, I think. You know, if currency is not an issue, it is. So I'm going to keep using this one. It's at least moderately better than what I mentioned, but that's a nice workaround for you. So now you know you can still kind of make things work. So going on to the other large cluster, Arcing Shot, Fuel Fight, Martial Prowess. I don't necessarily need the crit chance, but it's nice just to have a little bit over crit, and the percent damage this proved to be pretty good on the returning projectiles at any rate. This is the only source of mana leech. If I didn't have that, I'd have to spend a point here. And then Martial Prowess, you know, that makes a lot of sense, right? You need 1 source of Pierce. Okay, I would have to spend 2 points or 3 to get these Pierce points. Don't need it though. Can get one of these clusters with aerodynamics. It's really nice. And then I like having at least 1 source of double damage. If I went the medium cluster route, which I mentioned before, I would put it in here. I would not have this medium cluster, but it is a good idea when you're looking at like the Scorch threshold and freeze and everything, to have at least one source of double damage is nice. Speaking of double damage, people usually get from Lethal Pride, and yes, Lethal Pride can prove to be a little bit more DPS than Brutal Restraint, but, I mean, let's just go through these, guys. 20% projectile damage, attack speed, elemental damage, crit chance, projectile damage, crit chance, aura effect, alchemist genius, crit chance. It's actually not that hard to get a really robust brutal restraint. There's a lot of mods that are good. There are also some elemental ailment mods in here you don't even see, and percent life is on the list for this. The lethal prides have almost no mods that are good. It's basically double damage or bust. You got intimidate on there too, but I don't know. I think brutal restraint is really nice. I like running elegant hubris's usually, but a brutal restraint works pretty nice for me on this build. I definitely recommend. It's usually a lot cheaper as well. Certainly gonna be cheaper than one of those 4 or 5 lethal double. And I think the lethal probably got nerfed because he's got shoved out anyway. So yeah, we'll go over some of the more passives in a little bit, but moving on to a couple more things in the jewels. We got the massive thread of hope, and you know, I'm getting a lot of value out of this. I mean, this is, everybody who knows anything about bows knows you get a lot of value out of this massive thread of hope. Taking the usual, we'll look more into that with the passives. And now here's one I haven't ran. I don't know if I've ever ran it on Natural Instinct actually, in like an end game build, but it did occur to me that I would get something like 72% increased damage, 11% increased attack speed, plus 6% movement speed, as well as 10 intelligence for spending 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Guys, that's a lot of value for 4 points. I felt like that was actually worth doing here to do this. Now the funny thing is of course I was getting phasing too and saving points here, but I don't actually need it because the last jewel we're going to look at, the last big one, is this Watcher's Eye. So Chaos Res and Crit Multi are the two that I'm going for, and a third useful one is good too. Permanent phasing, I mean, you can hardly argue with that, guys. You can hardly argue with that. These are the 3 big auras I'm using, and this was very expensive. It cost me 150 divines, I think, before it was divined. And it's very good, nice divining setup now. I really like it, and of course it will allow me to drop the Unnatural Instinct if and when I want to. I might at some point do an Elegant Hubris setup. I don't know exactly, but that's a great Watcher's Eye. You don't necessarily need the perma-phasing there, though. You don't need the Crit Multi either. You could just drop the Crit Multi with Anger. It would be a lot cheaper option, but it's nice to have that. We have over 600% Crit Multi as a result. Now I suppose the very last jewel is this one here, which I did mention before. Corrupted Blood Immunity. Gonna have it somewhere. The Massive Wheel is probably the other sensible place to get it. Or maybe Medium Cluster. Actually, probably Unnatural Instinct, now that I think about it. But guys, that's it for the jewels. Passives. Right back to it. Okay. This is a very, very tight build. I had to make a lot of hard choices here. The Ranger tree is just so unbelievably strong. Getting a double cluster set up, I mean, you know I had a hard decision, not even getting these last 2 points here, not getting the 30 life here. This mastery is still bonkers strong. If you look at the PoE DPS, if you remove this, you lose so much damage on there. I would like to have more medium clusters. I really would, but you know, can't hardly fit it in. The worst, as I mentioned before at the beginning, as you saw, this is the least valuable 4 points here, I think, is this medium cluster, but the double damage is kind of a big deal. Not much to say. Getting life where I can if it's efficient. I still need a 30 intelligence here. Trying to be extremely efficient with the points. Crit Multi, prioritizing that. Get some of the bleed node. Don't need the crit chance from the mastery here, but this new wheel here is very strong. Storm Rain and Rain of Arrows. Bleed automatically, so very powerful there. We got a new wheel here. I mean, you can't not take advantage of that amount of reservation efficiency, right? I could, I guess, maybe if I ran Sovereignty, except I would still be under the amount I need. We get Suppression Mastery here, which I don't normally cannot take necessarily if I'm running Magic Find in previous leagues. Aura Effect is very strong. Reservation Efficiency, Harrier is here. Finesse for 1 point. Perfectionist, got 98% chance to avoid stun. I mean, look how much value that is giving me. That point's kind of unusual to be giving that much value. It just seems like every single point's crazy important, and I mean, that's why I didn't do this. You know, I could drop this medium cluster and just get the points directly this way, and then anoint something else. You know, the strongest anoint, actually, if I can find it here, It's probably this one. Technically, I think it's battle trance, but that's not necessarily going to be up all the time. I don't really like it. The rage cools off really, really fast and ramps up kind of slow. So I decided to go this route. And yeah, I think that's it for the passives. I might be forgetting something, but should basically it. Oh yeah, long shot still in play. Need instant leech somewhere, and it costs too many points to go up this way. Not gonna do it. The only other thing we'll probably talk about is this. Okay, so of course these are still the passives I'm using. Still not doing tinctures. It's just so strong. It's so unbelievably strong. Popping the Val Haste with Unbound at the same time is just so crazy, guys. The shocks ramping up right away. The double max Scorch and Oath of Winter, easily the strongest ascendancy. I'll speak more to the power of the ascendancy at the end of the video. Let's get to the path of building. All right, here it is, loaded in the path of building. We're going to look at some numbers. You'll see there's an extra 2 loadouts, Nimbus and Tinctures. This is the current setup that I have. 236 million DPS. Again, this is 3 or 4 times a higher number than normal, with parameters all set up basically the same way. What am I doing in here? Well, Tincture down to 1 is 78 million. This is with a Headhunter Pinnacle boss set up 0 Headhunter buffs. Elemental hit of the spectrum is going to hit at least twice thanks to Nimbus, but actually if you position yourself well, a lot of the returning projectiles hit. And then the tornado is spawning as well, and yes, that does matter. There for a while I was accidentally took tornado out for Frostbomb, which I run on consecrated ground maps off pilfered bosses. For like an entire day I didn't run with tornado and kind of didn't realize I was losing damage, but somebody mentioned something about it. I put it back in and immediately felt the damage increase. It was a huge increase. I mean, that's kind of the story there. I know automatically that's giving me a lot. Really nice movement speed multiplier, 250%. Okay, it used to be in the 300s with Berserk, but we don't have Berserk, so I'm pretty happy with that. Perhaps the biggest complaint about the build ever was the movement speed, and there were some growing pains in there as you switched out of the crit into crit from a double inspired learning setup. Tattoos helped a lot with that, and you know, getting a corruption on those lionized paws was a big deal as well. But anyway, let's take a look at the configuration. Everything is up. Okay, bleeding, close range, 70 projectile damage, so if I'm standing on top of the boss, close range for 5% additional. This is very powerful in maps, but even still effective against bosses. Returning projectiles have max return distance usually, and everything's blinded. Okay, I think I got a tattoo for that. Max Scorch, yeah, actually. Freeze, seconds of freeze. So this is set up for optimal conditions, of course, except that it's average unbound time. Flasks up, but not much in the way of damage from flasks, so it didn't really matter much. No endurance charges on the build. 7k max fizz hit. I've played with like the entire league. Doesn't really matter. Am I leeching? Well, maybe. Probably. Quit recently, yeah, obviously. Okay, so that is, you know, most of the stuff you would kind of expect to be up as it is. In the calculations, the damage is just absurd, up to, you know, 1 million on the elemental damage side. You can see Trinity's obviously going to work very, very well. Some important numbers to look at would be Scorch. Threshold, wow, 85% on a Pinnacle. I'd say that's going to be max. We also have Freeze Threshold, 137 million. That's a respectable number. You know, when I have way less gear and was running Painseeker gloves, I also had a number around this. So, you know, another reason why you can switch out of Painseeker is because you start doing so much damage that your threshold's still incredibly good anyway. And then, you know, shock effect, well, okay, 76%. Doesn't really matter the way shock is set up this way. 8 projectiles. Resistances are good. Leech is good. Accuracy at 99%. There's the damage taken hits. Okay, obviously it's looks sketchy, but in actual practice, not bad at all. Not bad at all. But you can take a look at that yourself if you want to open the PoE. That would be fine. One quick thing to mention before we go from the path building is the 5th loadout and now theoretical Tincture setup. So guys, I finally did it. I know many of you were asking me to check this out. I haven't PoB'd it. Not that interesting. Check out. Well, I figured before I made this video, I should probably at least theory craft what it's going to look like. So it's here. All right. Now, this is not exactly optimized perfectly well. Some of the gem links don't actually make that much sense with this setup, such as the bombarding clones link for ignite. It's not going to make that much sense because now I'm igniting naturally. So you could put a guard skill in there. You could do some other things potentially, but without changing too much. Okay, I got 30% more damage, which is kind of a surprise. However, I straight up lost one flask. I lost a diamond flask, but that's more than made up for it. I also lost the rarity flask, okay? So one flask straight up sacrifice. Fury of Nature, gone, okay? Now this is a very powerful 2 jewel slot, and if nothing else, could have a couple of basic jewels that would give me a lot of damage and stuff there, so the comparison's not exactly fair. Still going for Oath of Winter. There's no way in hell I'm not going to take Avatar of Wild and Oath of Winter here, but you got to get Seasoned Hunter to even unlock the Tincture. He's probably going to go 2 with this setup. These are optimized Tinctures, okay? These are perfectly rolled, if I'm not mistaken. So those is perfectly rolled best in slot Tinctures for the build. And yeah, it's more damage. You got to press the buttons though. Oh yeah, also lost 7 passive points, but kind of made up for it because I basically just pulled out damage links with crit and stuff to get, you know, these 4 here and then these 3 here. But, you know, this is kind of a quick and easy substitution for Tinctures, and, you know, it would play well. I'm sure it would play well. Looks like I lost a little bit of movement speed too, maybe. But I don't know if I'm all that interested in doing this. You know, just for 30% more damage, having to add more buttons, losing a flask, and losing all the proliferation and double, you know, ailment effect. Guys, I don't really think that's worth it. That's not necessarily worth all that difference. Do you guys think it's worth it? I don't really think it's worth it. Anyway, now we'll get on to the final thoughts. Yeah, so we're back at it here in the hideout, and I'm just loving the Warden. I cannot see myself playing Deadeye. I just can't see myself doing it. Why would I do that when I have so much power at my disposal for the Warden? Yeah, I didn't technically path of building the Deadeye, but I know it's going to be, you know, the Tailwind is nerfed. Now without running Magic Find to get the Tailwind boots anyway, so, you know, the advantage, the Tailwind advantage of Deadeye is really squeezed here because we get those boots anyway. We already get Far Shot, and you do get double Far Shot with Deadeye, but I mean, getting a lot of the Deadeye's power on the Warden anyway, and the Deadeye doesn't get any of the Warden's power. I suppose I would steal the Avatar of the Wilds buff maybe, or Oath of Winter perhaps, but guys, I don't know. I mean, it's incredible. I cannot believe how easy it was to do the Pilfering Divination strat. I mean, I know a lot of players, a lot of characters, a lot of ascendancies, gear is same as mine or better than mine. We're not able to do those farms, and it's because of the build enabling freeze and the massive increase in single target damage. So it was able to really handle single target. This is the best state of single target bow scenario I've ever seen, especially when you factor in freeze and be able to legit perma freeze tier 16 bosses is wild. Not just tier 16 boss, massively toughness buffed tier 16 bosses with or without headhunter buffs. It's absolutely crazy to me. I don't think it's going to go through. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next league, how much this ascendancy gets nerfed. I highly recommend you switching to it. Bows or not, I definitely recommend trying the Warden, because that's where the real power lies in. It's not even necessarily bows. It's just incredible with the Warden. So, great. It's just been a great experience, and I don't regret not league starting Lightning Strike or whatever, Zenith or whatever other meta builds are. I really enjoyed both. There was a lot of new stuff to be had. I think it would have been a mistake to league start Deadeye. It wouldn't have been that much different. But to have the opportunity to do Warden and see what that's all about, been absolutely incredible. And I've loved kind of building around it. I feel incredibly blessed the fact that my league starter, I put in so much prep for it, for a freeze elemental hit of the spectrum Deadeye, which was very difficult to pull off. And then we just gifted this ascendancy at the last minute. Felt incredibly blessed. I know so many of you followed this build, and so many of you are still playing it. Some of you are switching to it. Some of you have switched off it. Not everybody loved the build, but a great many of you have given really positive feedback. So this has been a popular league for my league starter, so I'm very grateful for that. And now it's basically done, okay? So there might be some evolution beyond this. I'm going to look into Fizz conversion stuff, or maybe a totally different build after this, or maybe Tincture stuff. I don't know exactly. Probably going to stop playing Elemental Hit of the Spectrum, though, somewhat soon. I am thinking I might go ahead and farm up a mirror for the bow. That would be nice to, you know, get a fuller sense of the power, so I can really apples to apples compare this build to some of the strongest builds that I've had in the past. But that's it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the showcase. Let me know what you think about the build if you're playing. If you have any of the remaining questions, please ask in the comments below. That's it from me for now. Expect more farming videos to come out soon. I'll be live streaming on Twitch as well, continuing to play this build, having a blast with it. And yeah, we'll see you there, Twitch or more videos on YouTube. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.